Hey guys, how's it going? September 12th, 2018. And, well, we're going to do something we haven't done in a while, and that is talk Run8. It's been getting close to a month. Yeah, just shy of a month since the last time I don't know if no, I may have fired up Run8. But, I didn't really do much other than that. Dang, I should have had a snack first. I just realized that. I saw a pop can there, and I was just like, hey, I'm gonna throw that over there. I'm like, wait a minute. No, I had a late snack, so I'll be fine. Forget that. Had one earlier. Why am I talking about food? Jesus, Murphy. I think I eat all the time. I just have little snacks now and then. Believe it or not, I don't eat much. My calorie intake's pretty low these days. Anyways, so I hadn't posted on my forum in a little while, but Scott and I were getting some emails back and forth. Actually, Scott was emailing. He has I believe he emails anybody who's on his list, and he was basically trying to let everybody know that, you know, his server would be up and, you know, whatever's going on. I checked his forum. I forgot I was even on the forum, to be quite honest. I don't check it on a regular basis, and it's nothing to do with Scott. It's just, that's just the way it is. I knew not much was happening, so it's kind of like the Southwest server. Actually, not so much a Southwest server. A lot was happening there, but I hadn't checked it in a while, and I knew that for me personally, I didn't think things were going to change to a certain degree that I was looking for. Southwest could be perfectly fine for a lot of people. It wasn't fitting my needs. So that was something I hadn't checked out in a while. The Southeast server, not only does it not fit my needs for the most part, they're a tight-knit group and they're not as busy or as popular, and that's basically because they're not running California, as far as I'm concerned. So I know Scott often, he's tried New York. I believe he even fired up the latest version of Waycross. Actually, this was kind of interesting because I was checking on Train Sim just to see if anything. I don't think there's going to be anything here, but I'll just take a look anyways. But I don't think there's anything new. Waycross update was back. Yeah, back on the 7th. And then we had the last update. Wow, July? Really? I didn't think it was that long ago. Wow. That tells you right there I have not been paying much attention to Run8. Because that just seemed like not too long ago, and then it was just like, because that was a fix to their 5th run. There was some issues between there and there. Yeah, and I gave up around the 15th, didn't I? So maybe that's why it didn't seem that long ago, because it's been about a month and I haven't touched Run8, as I said. But that came out, and I believe I installed it. I'm not 100% sure on that one. I can't even remember if I did or took. I don't know. I did not even take a look at it. And that's got nothing to do with, like as I was showing here, and there's no other press releases or any other information forthcoming. So that was, I hadn't even checked. I used to remember checking their site once a day, especially in the build up to version 2. But no, I very rarely check the Run8 Studios website on a regular basis anymore because, wow, I guess there's a skunk nearby somewhere. Whew, yummy. As long as he's not, well, no, he's not in my house, so that's a good thing. He better not be in my house. Wow, that's strong. But So yeah, there was a post over on Train Sim, and um, you know, it was announced, and Jason's in there. So after installing, and then there was somebody, got upset about it, and I defended it. I was like, okay, whatever. I saw this. I saw this post, and this really is in a nutshell. I mean, yeah, I've been critical of the developers, as far as direction and a few other things. But that's more with the program as opposed to anything they put out for Roots. I've always been pleased with the Roots and the add-on packs. The program, as far as where I'd like to see it, or actually, I'd like to see, as I've said before, I'd like to see more of these third parties they keep talking about bringing on, or at least I shouldn't say they keep talking about, because they're not really talking about anything right now. But I don't know if that's coming in version 3. I kind of mentioned version 3 over on Train Sim, and people like one person jokingly said, "Geez, they just put a version 2 out," and I was like, "Well, yeah, I know." But they were talking about version. Last I heard, they're talking about version 3 somewhere around the new year. I don't know. So whatever. But no, there's no excitement for me at the moment. I don't miss Run8, but I'm still trying to find that void. I haven't found that yet. I've been like this for a while, and most I would say most Mondays and Wednesdays as of late, and those are my free days. Although I was out at least trying out the my ATCS setup. It works on some control points, others it doesn't. But anyways, no, I watched the train tonight. I saw 3:30. I saw the Amtrak. So I mean that was fine. But anyways, these are the various places that I would. As I was saying, I don't frequent Southeast. I forget the last time I was on their forum, but there's, like I said, there's a tight-knit group of guys. And you know something, I mean, the more I think about it, a tight-knit group sometimes can be some of the best groups. And, I thought more about that, and I thought, yeah, it's like, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if that's the way to go. Now, I know Jason has plans to expand the Southeast, which is great. I mean, everybody's got to make money, and if you the thing is, if you can get a group of people, or you get the proper, not just the AI, but the actual work AI, as I like to call it, if you actually can have a dispatcher who can dispatch a territory on a regular basis, and you have people that work the jobs, then it does actually make it very feasible to have something going on bigger. California's freaking huge. I mean, the Northeast isn't shabby either, and I mean, those are, but California usually will get the most people on, simply because it gets the widest audience, I would say. I think. But again, if you limit what you give, sometimes I've found, even with my experience in hosting California, when I limit what I give, I notice that people kind of die off, because no, they don't want to stop running after Mojave. They want to run their trains onto Cajon. They want to run their trains, past Needles and through Barstow, and they want, past Mojave into Barstow area and through Needles and all that other stuff. So when I put limits on what I wanted to simulate, I found there wasn't as much interest. And that was where it started getting really boring for me. If it's just me, it's one of those things. It doesn't work. And I even tried to make it so that I could run it on my own regardless. But even so, I'm not too sure about that. So that's the Southeast forum. They're still somewhat active. Their forum is not nearly as active as the Southwest forum, which I know Mike's been very busy at work. I hadn't been on the Southwest forum in a while, as I was saying. I did post a few comments here and there. I usually had email notifications, and perhaps I was ignoring them. But I had one, and I think it was earlier today or something. I looked at it, and it was one of the discussion topics that was in there. As you can see, I've posted in there. But one of the posts seemed as if, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically the message was they felt as if the interest. Actually, Mike had said this too, and I'll paraphrase him, that the interest in the Southwest server had diminished, that there wasn't as much work or interest or something like that along the lines, and things didn't seem as it seemed in one person's eyes that the server was basically heading to a point where it was going to become non-existent, and that's not the case. Mike's just been very busy, and Mike even said that he felt as though because he couldn't put all that time and energy in it because he was the one that had to generate the trains and all that, that was why he says he's basically putting the blame on himself, saying that because he's been too busy, he hasn't been able to do this and that and generate the trains or what have you. So I haven't explained as far as why certain servers that I just don't, you can't beat them, join them. And there's there's certainly plenty of options. The reason why I don't go on the Southeast server, and I had it there for a minute, but anyways, the reason why I don't go on the Southeast server, for example, is because I find that it's such a tight-knit group that it's very difficult to find dispatch sessions. At least that's my experience. That could have changed, and if it has changed, by all means, somebody can let me know. But from what I can tell, it hasn't. They run it very similar to how version 1 ran, except that they will run AI just to put up some interest, and that's about it. I love dispatching. I love running under dispatched conditions. I also love the operations end and seeing the progression and being able to run various switchers. So there's a lot of things that I do like that Run8 is capable of doing. Unfortunately, when things expand, as I've said before, as things expand, that becomes one of the things that it makes it difficult. Now, Southwest, I'm seeing these reminders here, like SRS operates on a frozen clock model. Mainline trains only run during published sessions. So I think there was a lot of sessions that were canceled back in August, etc. And what happened was, basically there was work to be done, but at the same time, people liked running sessions. So the people who liked running sessions, I don't know. I'm assuming. I have no idea. But whatever the case may be, if it just becomes, for me, here's I mentioned Southeast. So Southeast didn't have the dispatchers. What Southwest wound up happening is they did have the dispatch sessions, but it always occurred on a Tuesday and a Thursday. And right around the summer, I switched from having to drop my son off at 8:30 till 9 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those were always the main nights that they ran. It was always Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays and Thursdays are the nights that I see my son. My son is not interested in doing any Run8. And had I been available at the start of the session, I'd even consider dispatching, just like I used to. So what had happened was I would join in a session about an hour in, and I found that the progression to, there was, certain jobs, but I found most of it was either I was going to run a train, and I could get a lot of traffic, depending upon how things were going and how things were setting up, especially this stuff that was coming out of Seligman. Now, I don't know what exactly was happening with Seligman. I think it was being somewhat dispatched or quasi-dispatched. But what ended up happening was you had a typical pattern that was showing up, especially on the double track sections. Single tracks, I mean, some things could change, etc. But I found, for me personally, that because they would only run 6 hours a week, and there were so many things to do, and I had this Monday and Wednesday gap, I was either like, okay, I need another fix. I need something else to fix it, because I was only getting a couple hours, and just to come on a Monday and Wednesday and run the locals. There was various batch jobs. Sometime you never knew if something would be available or what would be available, and then sometimes it was just stuff that was, put it this way. The way I see something like California, at least ideally, if in an ideal world, is if I'm coming on, I want to be able to either run trains under dispatch. In an ideal world, I want to be able to dispatch. I want to be able to run trains under dispatch. I want to possibly be able to run a local, possibly, be able to, if a passenger's available. I understand, you don't want to run passengers all the time, but in the odd case a passenger's available, maybe I want to run it. Of course, I mean, everybody has to have a shot at it, right? But I found that there was only a limited number of options available, no matter how hard the admins worked. So because it was so huge, and you get this broad, you had like this whole area, but then there was just those, a few jobs would come up, and a lot of them were prerequisites, like you had to move cars here, or you had to do this and do that, and normal stuff. But I found the variety at times was not as much. At least this is how I felt. So I really couldn't get a feel as someone who would come in. Let's say I knew I wanted to come out on Monday. I really didn't have a feel on a Monday as to what it was that might be available. So I could plan my night. I could say, oh yeah, I'm going to run on the server tonight, but I really didn't know if I was going to like what I saw. And a lot of times I remember I would do live streams, and I would come on and I would be like, I was all excited, and then the stuff that was there was just ugh. Or there's been time, I knew Tuesdays and Thursdays I would get, a little bit, but there was times where I wanted to dispatch too. And yes, the offer was put in there. I could take over for dispatching for an hour and a half or however long the remainder of the session lasted. But what had happened come into the summer, what changed was going into the summer, my son was now allowed to see me until 9 p.m. That meant another 30 minutes. That has not been removed. That's basically him getting older, and now it's 9. So they had a weekend sessions, I think. I had my son I had my son until 9 p.m. on Sundays throughout the summer. And then just recently things started changing back. I haven't really checked into it. Honestly, I haven't missed Run8. I can't say I've missed it. I've had it here. What I'm trying to do is I've been trying to fill that void. And I'm certainly interested in trains. And yeah, I know I've talked about doing programming and I've talked about doing all kinds of things. I don't have the ambition right now. I just don't. And I want to. I have the ideas and I have the imagination, but I just don't have the drive to get it done. At least not yet. That could change with the weather changing or whatever, and my son and I not being able to go on so many trips. There's going to come weekends where we're going to be bored, I'm sure, and it's going to be decision time. And I know he's kind of interested in that. So, I mean, hopefully at some point that, and plus a monetary incentive, gets me going on that path. But at the same time, I'm waiting to see what Run8 does as well. I'm not stopping because of Run8. That ain't the case. I really don't care right now what Run8 does, to be honest. It'd be nice to know, but they can do whatever they want, basically. So yeah, that's my forum, and I posted the interest, and Scott and I were talking. Again, I forgot I was on Scott's forum. This is also out there. It's I believe Scott's is, if you go on to Run8 servers, you can get into this forum as well. He has been putting the server up. He's been trying different ones. You can read all the stuff. He's had very little interest or participation. He can't seem to get people interested. So he's got a lot of time on his hands as far as being able to go in there and put it, being retired. He basically he's bored, and he's really wants the involvement with others. I told him tonight, I don't even know if he's up right now. We were I don't know if his server is on right now or not. I told him tonight that I was going to be busy, and then I got back a little. Yeah, so no takers anyways. This is back on August 27th, so he's been sending email. I don't know if it's on or not, but anyways, so that's what's going on there. It was I got a message there, but I'm not going to read it online. I don't know who that is. So, but the interest post was on my forum, and so what I had posted, and I made it very, very small. I know what I want. I think I'm being very clear as to what I want. Scott's very open to pretty much anything, which is cool. The question is Scott and I going to be enough to run something? And I know, I'm trying to think in the past. There was a time, one of the last times I think I ran, if I recall, I was the only one running I'm pretty sure I was the only one running. I can't remember for sure, but it felt like that. Put it that way. And I had it up 24/7 the last time I ran it, and I thought, I'll just keep things going and see how it goes. Ideally, I mean, my son's computer, we're getting into stuff now, so the likelihood of me going 24/7 again is highly unlikely. I think I've been down that road already. I would like to run a pseudo organized. Well, anyways, what am I talking about as far as? Never mind. It's not my son's computer. It'd be my computer. The idea that I originally had was to put a server up that would actually run on a demand basis, but have the ability to organize sessions of some sort. I didn't know exactly how that was going to tailor off to. The last time I looked at the various things, well, let's open up here. Let's take a look, and oh, by the way, this is what I've been working on here. So yeah, it's my neck of the woods down here. I was down at Nell's Road tonight, but yeah. So yeah, I run that in the background and just check in and see what's going on. There's not much going on. My area is not on the busy stretch. We get a few trains down there. It's not a big deal. A couple in the morning, a couple at night, or a few in the morning, a couple at night, and that's about it. But so let me go in and take a look and see what I got as far as Run8 goes. If I can find my icon in all this mess. This is like Where's Waldo? When I look at this, there we go. Had to think about it for a second. I'm like, okay, what's the icon? It's been a while. I don't know what the latest version. I haven't really been that interested in running anything. So if we start off with the main route, and we go extra board, and I've done this before. I remember doing a video on this. Okay. So I'm looking at the various routes that I have. Now this is Scott's update as far as what everything's looking like in the LA area. So I'm gonna start here first. I know LA is the latest and greatest, which is cool and all. And I did run one for a while. I think I did run a test for a while to run the LA. And it was okay. And there's a lot of industries, a lot of switching, a lot of basic work that can be done. For me personally, though, it burned me out really quick. As far as running on a regular basis, think of it this way. Like I said, let's take you back to the ideal world again. In the ideal world, when you're approaching a certain time, even let's say if a server is, how would you say? So, okay, let's use Southwest for an example, the Southwest server. The Southwest server will run and announce 2-3 hour sessions, maybe a third a week, if that. So you're going to get through 6 to 9 hours. you can kind of know what's going on as far as what trains, but it progresses so slowly, especially if you're on certain days of the week, that you really don't know where you're at as far as particular jobs, and certain jobs that you may like may not become available again for several weeks in real time. So it's difficult. You get into a bit of a rut that way, I find, anyways. That's for me for particular jobs, because otherwise you've got all the various you got the locals that come in, and then you just basically, you got the supply trains, the locals, and then all the industries that have to be worked. That's basically LA in a nutshell. I know that sounds very simplistic, but it's true. UP brings in their supplies by some of their mainline trains and set-offs. BNSF does the same, and then it's just a matter of running all the industries. And then everything else is just playing around in the passenger yards, the engines, the intermodal facilities, I think there's 3 actually, intermodal facilities. So there's that stuff going on, and it's just basically there's so much going on that you really can't get a feel for it. And if you have a favorite, you really can't get an idea. At least in my opinion, you can't get an idea. You lose that kind of flow. So knowing, I can't explain it any other way. I just don't understand how I could possibly explain it any other way other than that. Now, with the SP or SPUP, whatever, I'm reading it off the top of this. With the UP, the Mojave sub, this had, for me, and even Quincy was mentioning, I don't know where Quincy is these days. He hasn't been posting very many messages. I think he's given up on me again. He'll say he's busy at work or whatever, but a lot of times he just, he figures I've given up, he gives up. But I don't blame him. A lot of people seem to have given up. And yet I still have a lot of subscribers, so that don't mean nothing. I subscribe to a lot of things. It doesn't mean I check out their channels all the time. So, but I still get a fair amount of views, so that's nice. So we have spawn points at Saco. We have a spawn point at Bakersfield. We have another spawn point at Vincent, Highland, and then that's it. This whole BNSF section, the only way you get a train to come across here is you have 2 choices. You either run needles in addition to this, because this is, here's the logic in this. I first of all, I love how the Northeast is set up, because he's got spawn points all over the damn place. Whereas this, you're forced to either adapt or do something goofy, or you're forced to run needles with it. Now, in theory, you could run needles and Mojave. Of course, if you're going to run a double track mainline, I would prefer to run Cajon as opposed to needles. So that's where I get into this whole thing where it's just like, well, and then you got a double track section here anyways. You got a little bit of a double track section there. Bakersfield, this was always their first route, because it's one of the more interesting routes. It's not the busiest, but it is busy enough, and it's interesting. And the traffic levels are still pretty high. But you could run practically any traffic level you want on this, and it wouldn't be out of place. I just showed you, for example, and I'll show you what I mean by out of place. If you take a look at this ATCS thing for a second, I know I'm not supposed to show this, but you take a look. Holy cow! There's a lot of trains these days are coming off the cow path. Here's a double track section. Okay, these guys up here, this double track section gets a fair amount of passengers, which is probably why they're still double track. So they still get about, I'm not too sure how many passengers. I would say about a dozen. I could be wrong on that. Let's say a dozen trains. I'm thinking probably more. That's more to London, which is up this way. But down here they still get quite a bit, and this is down right now because I don't know, they've either dropped a code line or whatever. But when you get into the Grimsby sub, which is this section here, this used to be a double track main line, they've got it the single, and this section right here only gets, I would say, I'm just trying to think now, at least four freights, maybe a fifth one if 332 is running, or 532, whatever the hell they call it. There's another one. So let's say on average 6 freights a day, if that, and 2 passengers. They don't and I think one local comes out here and switches this area, and that's about it. Mind you, they seem to be getting a lot of stuff coming this way. I don't know what the hell this one is. I assume this is 330, but I always thought he switched the yards, so I don't know what this is. I have no idea. I've seen a couple trains, or I'm surprised to see another one, so they might be running another one for some reason. But the point is, what I'm saying is, there's hardly any trains on that, and yet even the freights up here, it's not as much as what it used to be up here. I would say well less of the single track section. I didn't mean to close that, but that's okay. Much less than what is happening here. This is actually the Northern Transcon, or I think it's called the Northern Transcon, if I'm not mistaken. Northern section of the Transcon, or I don't know what the hell they call it. But it splits here at Barstow, and the rest of it goes to LA, and then the rest goes towards Oakland and whatever. But this actually gets a fair amount of traffic, but the point I'm trying to make is, you can run any schedule you want, and it wouldn't feel out of line. You see what I'm saying? I mean, really, I'm not exactly sure why. I can understand the reason why it's single here is because the grades, there's a lot of tunnels, there's all kinds of stuff. So you can see tunnel, blah, 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 blah. And they're double tracking some of this anyways. So there's all kinds of places, whereas here it starts getting into the more open area, and you're getting closer towards holding off trains and splitting off. So this kind of makes sense coming up towards a junction to have a double track section, let's say. Ditto for this area. Again, a double track section makes sense to be coming in here, because now you're having trains that are crossing each other, so you need ways of getting around if people are holding or whatever, or can get around various ways. So that makes sense. You can run. I mean, literally, I could run this at, like Niagara. I could almost go so far as to run this like Niagara. At the very least, Southwest Ontario. I could run it like that. And that's the crazy thing about this. I could easily swap this and put CN engine, that CN switcher engine or whatever, or SD, what is it, the SD40-2, I could run CN on the leads. And I mean, it wouldn't be Canada, but I could pretend it is. I mean, I'm not saying, I mean, I know that's a stretch, but I mean, other than what the temperature it's saying, I mean, the fact that the desert wouldn't be too well. It looks pretty dry in comparison. So no, it probably wouldn't work too well, but you know, it wouldn't feel that much out of place for me personally. It would remind me of the prairies and the mountains up by BC and Alberta in Canada. It's very similar. And the crazy thing is, Northern California, a lot of people don't realize this, but Northern California is the same longitude of where I live. Or is it latitude? Man, I forget longitude, latitude. Degrees north. Okay, how about we put it that way? So it's basically along the same lines. Now, if you were to run needles, now all of a sudden it's like, okay, well this it looks a lot more major, and it is. Because now that does look like a transcon, and it is. So it runs, and it would look out of place running 10 trains a day on that thing. But up here, I mean, you could run whatever. I mean, even if you were to run 24 trains a day, let's say. You want to run a few intermodals, you want to run whatever. You can run practically anything. The problem, as I said before, is getting the trains out of there. And if you wanted to screw, you know, you could actually run it out of here. You don't even have to do, you can use Highland, whether it's BNS, you can still do BNSF and UP. So, I mean, this to me is the most doable. And the workloads, yeah, there's a lot of different places you can switch in Bakersfield, but in reality, a lot of these industries are not as busy as they used to be, and who cares? You can actually use a lot of proto-lancing, and it wouldn't feel out of place. You have a workable yard in Bakersfield, both ends. This yard actually has more room. It's totally underutilized compared to the others, and then there's a lot of things you can do here. Mojave, you know, you got your stuff there. You know, if you want to take out this section and just run the UP section, you can do that as well. I was saying before, I mean, I think the way I did it before was I ran UP out of here and ran BNSF out of Vincent. So I've done this before. The reason why I switched over was LA came out. Now Quincy was saying he thought I should have never switched it. He thought I was happy doing it and blah blah blah. Maybe I was, I don't know. And I think I was running random. I was just running a random set of trains, and it didn't really matter what it was. They just ran. So that seems to work. It seems to be a formula. That seems to be the closest thing I can get to work. Cajon, I love Cajon. I love LA too, to be honest. I love the humps. That's another thing. But at the same time, I mean, you know, you're not going to be running a hump yard if you're trying to simulate. I mean, yeah. I mean, if I was to use Canada as an example, because, for example, Canada, and you know something, the funny thing is, Barstow is not nearly as big as what the real Barstow is. So yes, the receiving yard is this, I believe, that size. And I believe the departure yard is that size as well. But Barstow, the number of bull tracks, they never increased them. They didn't do what was done in the others. So in theory, yeah, you could run Barstow, and yeah, you could do it. But then, like I said, I mean, if you're going to include the BNSF section, let's say you started on phase 1. Well, phase 1 would be, okay, let's go back and we start with that. And see if we can get interest. We run that. See if we can get interest. Pick some industries. If we feel like we're getting through it too much, you know, it's basically start from the ground up. Figure out what trains we want. Make whatever symbols we want. We can still use real world. We can use real symbols. It's not a question of if or not. But what I'm saying is, I always like the fact that they always use symbols as opposed to train numbers, because it was quite easy to simply make a train with a different location, and then you knew where the hell it was going. So that was pretty simple. But you know, like I said before, it's like, and this here, you get to run your BNSF, you get to run some UP, and you know, that's fine. I think I still have the scheduling, the train scheduled for. Yeah, I think I do. I might have to look at some of the backups, but I'm not sure. But like I said, once you get into Cajon, then you're into a much more scenic version, and yeah, I miss running Cajon. I really do. I love running Cajon. I love running a UP train or a BNSF train, and then seeing a UP coming around. I like doing it once in a while. But after a while, that gets old, and then you want to go back to doing something else. And, you know, just running in an area and having enough AI trains, you know, it can get old real quick. But seeing a progression, a noticeable progression, for me personally, and the way progression works, okay, is for me is knowing that a lot of people or a lot of things are doing work, so that it doesn't just feel like me. If it feels just like me, or if it feels like it does, there's only so many people, that's where you start. It doesn't feel like you're in a real sim anymore. It doesn't feel like it's a realistic simulation of what's happening. And it defeats the purpose. Yeah, okay, you might be running a whole whack of trains for a few hours in a week, but you know, it either takes too long or you don't get through it, and yeah, it's too much. I've been through the other routes before too, but let me just take a look real quick here. So obviously that's the most popular, and I've already gone through LA. LA can be done in theory, but the fact that there's so much track going in and out, it's crazy to try to imagine that. Just, and the crazy thing is that a lot of times it's just one supply train, and the way it makes up the cars and all the other wonderful stuff that the program does or doesn't do. So we got the southeast, and in the southeast we've got another basic way that things can be doing. If you start on the original, what I was running originally, I found a good one to run was the Sanford sub. The only thing I had a very difficult time, Sanford sub is, it takes a lot of energy to run a train. As in, it takes a lot of concentration, it takes a lot of paying attention to what you're doing, a lot of using the horn, especially down this section here. Well, really anywhere on the Sanford. As you come towards Orlando in this area, you really start going crazy with the horn coming through this section here. So there's sub yards. There's lots of switching potential. I like it, but again, it's, you know, you're gonna have, you need participation. You need to know what people want or what people are looking for. And the danger zone, looking back at the Bakersfield or looking back at the Mojave sub side, is when people have other routes, they want to run other routes. They don't want to just run the basics. So if they got other routes, they're going to want to run other routes. That's the pickle that probably Mike sees himself getting into if he doesn't put in Seligman, or maybe he wants to put Seligman in. I don't know. Maybe he wants to put all the routes and have all the rolling stock, which is fine. Me, I didn't see a point in purchasing Seligman. I had really no point of doing it, so I didn't. The highlight for me is Rice Yard. I think this yard is fantastically done. Now, I wish, if anything, and I'm not going to harp on it that much, because I'm probably not going to use it until some procedural change in Run8, as in the program. But and it all comes down to having some kind of AI dispatching. AI dispatching will help big time, because then at least you can start doing the progression, but then you need to get the manpower to do the switching, because you still need some way in which you can do the switching. I know those things are doable. It is not unforeseen that a train cannot switch itself. It is possible, but it would take some clever thinking. I think if you added those things just to these 3 routes alone, any one of these routes would be absolutely incredible, and would keep a single player, a multiplayer, you name it, anything, you're going to want to be involved in it, as far as I'm concerned. I know a lot of people are still into this, but then again, I've been at it for, what, 5-6 years or whatever the hell it was. It can get old after a while, and, you know, it may have ran its course. I'm not sure. So there is, I believe it's the is it the Fitzgerald sub they're working on? I think so. I'm pretty sure it's a Fitzgerald. Yeah, it's not the Nahanta, I know that. It's definitely not the Thomasville. So yeah, it must be the Fitzgerald that they're working on. That's the new expansion. And again, you know, once you expand, then, you know, what do you do? So I mean, there's a lot of single track sections still, even in this area, but these are separated from the funnel. The funnel is where you get your double track, and that's why it's double track. But yeah, a lot of potential. Then you got the Northeast. Now, the Northeast is one that I have tried. It's not too far off, except I do know what the real, and this again is a custom, Scott has done custom work here. This used to be, again, a 4-track main line. It's down to 2. The key here, what makes this very difficult to try and utilize under small basis, is number one, even without that, let's just say 100% realistic levels. Let's say you have 100% traffic level, 100% capacity of movements, not capacity of line, but you know, you're running prototypical levels. You have a dispatcher, you're running the trains up and down the line. What's going to end up happening is, because you're running majority double track mainline, the only time you're really going to get into a bind is in the Selkirk area. The passengers down here, they're going to do their thing. There's a little bit of a bottleneck here. There's one at Hoffman's as well. But other than that, I mean, these are your little bottlenecks, and there's ways to get around them. So because of those limited bottlenecks, it can get boring real quick, I find, at least running. If you're running the locals as opposed to the bottleneck, first of all, if you add the locals in, that adds, especially if you have locals running on a regular basis and they're doing their thing, then what happens there is they add a different element, especially, let's say, the Syracuse area. So the locals are running in and out. That makes it kind of interesting because, you know, they have to dodge in and out of traffic, whereas if you're the traffic, you're basically going around them. You may be delayed. There's all potential for a lot of things to happen. So that's one of the things. But if you're running this on your own, if you're doing it in single player, I got bored of this real quick. In single player, I really did. And yeah, I could run AI as well to try to make it interesting and all that other stuff. It's not the beauty of the route. The beauty can only take you so far. Eventually it becomes down to the operation, and there's a reason why a lot of people will say double track main lines, you know, it's boring. And I find Run8 has gone for the busiest routes as opposed to some of the smaller ones. They got away with Mojave Sub, for me personally, only because that was a picturesque, very famous route, and also provided the most potential for single track mainline dispatching. So that kind of really highlighted their capabilities. Now, yes, there's crossovers, there's all kinds of different things. These crossovers are not utilized as much simply because the mainline speeds are pretty high. Even the passengers have a tendency of not, you know, the overtakes and stuff like that. So unfortunately, I mean, this is a beautiful route and all. It would be, like I said, if it was running at 100% capacity and a lot of people were still making sure that all the switching was done and all the industries were going on, then yes, there is the potential for some things to happen. Running some of the locals in and across, like some of the short lines, there is potential, but I don't. For me personally, it's a very difficult route to really have a huge, fantastic, fun time for me. And this has nothing against the route. Like I said before, it is to me the most beautiful route of the three. It's got the best scenery. There's some very in-depth care with some of the trees, with the water. That was one of the first routes that really, it was just like, wow. I mean, seeing the trees, seeing the canal, or seeing the Mohawk and the Hudson and all that other stuff, it was really cool. So yeah, so it takes me back to the only one that I'm seeing out of the three is I'm going right back to here, and I'm going back to the original, and that is the Mojave Sub. If I was to do something, I would do it here. At least I would. That doesn't mean somebody else can't come along with an idea that might get my curiosity going and say, oh, okay, well, yeah, that'd be kind of cool. And again, these are my ideas. I don't know what everybody else is thinking. I mean, if you have ideas and a way that you want to present, by all means, do a live stream or post detailed messages and give a lot of information as far as, you know, because really, I mean, at the end of the day, you almost have to, if you're going to host a server or do anything and you expect people to follow, you know, say you build it, they will come. Well, yeah, that might be true to some extent, but that's not necessarily the case. People need to know what it is they want, you know, they how would you say, for me, if I know somebody's just running a server and, you know, things are open or whatever, I don't know exactly what it, yeah, I'm open to different things, but I want to know what it is like is happening. Like, are we running dispatch sessions? Are we running, you know? And that's kind of the thing where I get at, where I'm like, I want to know what it is, you know, that we're doing. Like, are we, you know, that's for me. So that's something like, for example, Scott and I really need to know what he's thinking. But I also am curious what other people are thinking, because like I said, if I go back to the Southwest server, all I saw was I was, because, you know, it was difficult for me to get on for sessions. I found I was missing out on the dispatching part that I used to love. But it's not all about just me dispatching. Sometimes I like to run and be dispatched as well. So it takes it takes a lot of manpower, but it also takes a lot of variance. One, it doesn't, you don't want to have people that just specialize in something, I don't think, in a small group. Because if they specialize in something, at least for me, now if everybody likes to just specialize in something and they like to specialize in different things, then it may work out real well, because then they're happy and they don't care about variety. I, for one, I look at a model railroad, I take it in the view of a model railroad. So what I do is I always look at it in the form of a model railroad club. If I'm going to a model railroad club, I may have an idea of what my first, like, and this is the last club that I belonged to, they had a sign-up sheet. And you didn't sign up beforehand, you signed up when you got there. So as I'm driving, it took me an hour and a half to drive to this place. That's how much I loved going there. And, you know, I miss it in some ways, but in other ways, the reason why I gave it up was two reasons. One, the amount of money of both fees and driving back and forth to Kitchener, you know, Kitchener Waterloo area. But an hour and a half there, an hour and a half back, and, you know, for only so many sessions a year, it was just like, it didn't, you know, it just basically lost its interest in me. But getting back to what I loved about it, what was cool about the way the sessions were, is they had a list of, you know, you had your mainline crews, you had your yard crews. You could be, you know, there was a yard master if you knew what you were doing. I tried it a few times. I really never mastered it well enough. But I was willing to try it. Dispatcher was interesting. Operator was Romford operator. Cartier dispatch was interesting. This is, we're talking Sudbury, which is Canadian Pacific Railway up central to northern Ontario. But yeah, I would love to do Romford, but then I also didn't mind doing the yard. If you had people who tended to like certain positions, then it made it difficult sometimes to try. Like, I like dispatching too, but I still found I got enough of my variety in. It didn't get very old. If I didn't get my number one pick, I would certainly get my number two or number three. That's where I knew going in to every operating session that there was a good chance I was going to get my A, B, or C plan, despite the fact that there was as many as I could have been pushed back as far as, you know, my 7th or 8th priority. When a system is big and there's a lot of people running or a lot of trains, and you have ideas as to what you may want to do, and then you're limited to time, and then you're not too sure whereabouts the trains are in the schedule. You're not too sure what's going to be done. Depends what gets done during the day, especially when you're on a 24/7 server. Like I'm talking Southwest now. So now it's just like, okay, well, this is the work that came up for it. You know something might be available to run tonight in the session. But then again, because you're not going to be at the start of the session, there's a good chance that somebody might take that job. So you really don't know. So you got that as a possibility, but then you have others, and then, you know, yeah, you may be able to, you can't really look forward to too much. And often, you know, that's just the way things went. But because you're not at the beginning, it's like getting into a model railroad club and showing up late. Well, guess what? If that board is signed up, well, and the thing was they ran on schedule, you definitely weren't going to be running certain things, but you might get something else, or you might get a second half or a second half shift of dispatcher or whatever, or if somebody else wanted to split, you know, a morning and an evening run, you could still get what you wanted. So it is possible, but that's the way I look at it. So for me personally, I like to be with the group that likes to do, or who are capable of doing almost anything, or wanting to do almost anything, and are, you know, are fairly atypical, or know, you know, what times they want to run, what kind of operating they want to do, you know, stuff like that. So I've in this video today, hopefully I've highlighted what I'm looking for. I don't mind running sweep. In fact, I don't mind running yards as well. Of course, I love running the hump, but the hump usually is in for high capacity. If we're starting phase 1 on this, I'm looking at this right now and I'm saying to myself, I don't mind knowing that Cajon's down here. In fact, I'm okay to start out not even running on this section right here. I don't have to run on that section, even though that's part of the route. I can just run on this section, and I could highlight UP. I don't even have to run all the locals in this area. And I think that's what I was doing when I first started out. Because it was just me, I focused on Mojave, and everything was Mojave focused. Everything else, I think Bakersfield, the trains just ran through, that was it. So I focused on Mojave first, and I ran that and got things going there. But you know, it doesn't have to stop there. I mean, you can certainly run the Bakersfield stuff as well, or you know, either a limited amount. There's stuff over here, but a lot of this stuff, you know, I think, well, some of this is obviously run out of Mojave and etc. But so yeah, like yeah, again, you don't have to use the same trains if you don't want. It doesn't really matter. But like I said before, you can run a train out of here and treat this as BNSF if you wanted to, as opposed to running it. I think what I was doing towards the end was I was running it all the way out of was it Yermo. So I was running it all the way out in between Yermo and bringing it up here, just to get the trains into position. There used to be a Hinckley, but anyways, they took that away back. Well, actually, they never took it away. It was just, there is a Hinckley. What is it there? I don't know. I'm trying to think if there was a Hinckley. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I'm thinking for version 1, but that wouldn't make any sense because they didn't have AI then, so I don't know what I'm thinking. I guess that's where we used to. I'm thinking of the RTS spawning system. I think we used to run it out of Hinckley. We ran it out of a few other spots as well, but oh, I know what I'm talking about. There's various train spawn locations. There used to be here as far as spawning manual trains in, if you wanted to. But yeah, so that's what I was thinking of. But this, as far as the AI systems in the spawn points that are set up right now, they go here. They don't have one at Hinckley, so you either Like I said, you run from Urim or you run from here. But this is so. Having said that, and I'm gonna end this very, very shortly because my throat's getting dry and I'm really hungry still. Yeah, and I want to relax for a little bit and see what happens. So, one of the things that I think would be cool is to run a server that doesn't necessarily have to run 24/7. It can run on various times ahead of time. Whether being planned is the best bet. Knowing that I like the calendars that the Southwest server uses, for example, but then have it so that I don't know if it would be like on a demand, like I'm thinking a crew based system, because like in the real world you either have crews or you don't. So yeah, if you're say for example you want to run and you're running the server and you're just by yourself, but you decide that you want to run to a certain a certain amount of time over the clock, you could spawn trains. You could actually spawn trains out of various areas and still dispatch this area by yourself while still being able to run or switch. That's the beauty about being small. But at the same time, you could also have it so that the trains don't necessarily run on a schedule per se, but run more on demand based on what crews are available. So instead of necessarily running trains based on the goofy bingo ball schedule picker thingamajiggy, whatever they do to decide to spawn trains, or you run on a manual spawn schedule, you could actually manually spawn based on demand. The problem with that is, depending upon how well you can do it a lot of different ways. You can schedule the demand, but will you actually have the supply? Or are you willing to just have it AI and then deal with the supply, but everything else in between that supplies your yards then have to become, especially if you're going to run 24 hours? Because if you're going to run 24 hours, I would think at that point you would have something supplying those industries. So that's the problem when you're running if you're running with very limited people. This is why I did Mojave. Just out of Mojave yard. That was the only yard I used at first. I knew I could probably run Mojave on a regular basis, and then see if the others if I had interest, then I would do more. Like I would push towards Bakersfield and start running those industries. But I could always have a dispatcher, or I could dispatch, or I could dispatch myself, whatever. But anyways, I think I'm probably done. I've probably been here before. It seems like I've talked about this before, but that's the only way I can think of out of all the routes. That's the only one that really seems feasible to me. I've looked at the others. Yeah, Sanford's possible. LA, I love LA. I really do. I mean, Ski was the one that got this for me. I didn't ask for it. He just all of a sudden got it. I was just like, I wasn't even ready to purchase this yet. But it was something that I was talking about when I was down here and thinking, yeah, it would be kind of cool. We could probably do LA sometime. And then all of a sudden I had LA and I switched over, and yeah, it was just like, whoa. And then I started doing LA, and it was just like, yeah, well, I'm not too sure about this now. After, you know, it was great at first, but then, you know, the buzz wears off, and suddenly you have to do something with that monster. And I'm not the type that can just say, you know, can turn it on, turn it off, and say, okay, well, yeah, I can run this and run it the way you want. And other people talk about, oh yeah, I can just spawn a train wherever you want. And it takes away from the realism for me. If you're just running trains for the sake with no purpose, that it just gets crazy. You want to have a purpose. At least I do. That's just my way. Maybe it's my operation stigma. I don't know. But anyways, that's it for now. I think I've said enough. So that night went by quick. So it's 10:26. So I'm gonna take it easy for a little bit. And yeah, by all means, shoot me emails if you got my emails, or post on the forums, the RTS forums, or wherever else. I'll check some of the other forums out as well, just to see if there's any talk about this or whatever. I don't know if this gives you ideas to do your own servers, or, you know, I don't know if Scott's listening or not, but that's the way I see it, at least for me. But there should be more options. Honestly, there needs to be more options in Run8, and ultimately having, what would solve a lot of this is having the AI. Because it's one thing having these two big huge servers that are out there right now. I guess I don't know, I guess Run8 Depot, and then I forget the other one was mentioned. There's another one out there that's fairly popular, apparently. I can't think of the name of it. That's how popular I think it is. But there is one out there that's doing pretty good. Highball? Maybe it's Highball? I don't know what the hell it is. Whatever. But I mean, how they do things, or, you know, their methodology is different, and, you know, their forms are, you know, anyways, I don't know. I can't speak of the one. I can definitely speak of Run8 Depot, but I'm not gonna bother at this point. It's just it wasn't for me. Didn't really work out either, and just having a bunch of people together doesn't necessarily make it great. But at the same time, that, you know, running a server, whoever you are, be it them, someone else, it's no easy task. And then organizing and planning, and then trying to figure out how you want to do it, and trying to make, it's a balance, a delicate balance. And what will end up happening is, if Run8 does, hopefully down the road, is they're looking at AI dispatching. There's looking at, even if they don't go AI dispatching, and they don't go some form of AI for being able to help switch the trains, like, and I mean, their AI is awesome. I love how they do their AI as far as the trains, the actual AI control of the trains themselves. I think that is great. It was great for version 2. I'd love to see for version 3 it expand. But if it doesn't, at the very least, I want to see these third-party developers, I want to see more content and smaller regions. Give us some smaller regions, give us something that we can handle, where we're not going to have to worry about expansion. And I know you can run a certain area. This is a good example, but you got to be able to spawn trains. You got to, you know, something that makes it easier for the single player, who can have some fun and still feel like he's not out of place, or, you know, in the middle of a transcon line, which is basically what that is. So, okay, guys, that's it for now. So, hope you enjoyed that, and yeah, we'll see where that comes about. Anyways, have a good one. We'll talk to you later. See ya.